Good evening, everybody. I'm Sue Enquist, the former UCLA softball coach. I want to thank you for investing your time tonight with us. I am so excited to announce this partnership. UCLA Graduate School of Education and Information Studies, alongside of UCLA Transformative Coaching Academy, is going to present a series of conversations, critical conversations. Tonight is our inaugural night. And I am so excited to announce our top recruit. She is first of all, a dear colleague, one of UCLA's most influential coaches, a winner, I believe it was 7-time NC2A champion, somebody that has really shaken sport in terms of really forcing all of us to look at sport and coaching a little differently. And we're going to talk about that tonight. But she's an author. The book, Life is Short, Don't Wait to Dance. Join me in welcoming the incomparable Miss Val Kondos. Hello.
Hi, Susie.
How are you?
I am so good. We've been waiting so long for this. Have we not?
Yes, there's no doubt. And I just think it's kind of fun. I want all our listeners to know, those of you that don't know Val and I, we were colleagues in the athletics department together. And we were those ones that you kind of had to keep an eye on. So kind of, I feel like tonight, it's like the parents aren't home and they gave us the key to the house. And we're going to really just pull back the curtain and have some really honest conversations around transformative leadership, both in sport, in teaching. And I just know we're both really proud Bruins, and it's just great to have you. Your thoughts?
Thank you so much. I'm so excited. I'm so excited to hear how many people were joining us tonight. So thank you all for being here. Coach Enquist and I have known each other 38 years, and we literally transformed together. We helped each other do that. And so we're very excited to share just what we've experienced and take your questions.
Well, and I appreciate you saying we transformed together. I think I was probably that person that was a little bit more behind you as more of a transactional coach, an authoritative leader. And I just never really gotten the chance publicly to say how much you inspired me to really look at the total athlete and their development. And you were that person that had that ability to make the student athlete know they mattered. But at the same time, everybody knows that's got the, love fest going with Miss Val and, her sequins and let's have joy. I want all of you to know that what held that up were some amazing processes and standards. And so talk a little bit about when you think about today, and I want to talk about everything. I want to talk about everything, Val, because first of all, you know us, we've got lots of opinions. Talk a little bit about how you navigated that, right? Taking care of the person, but not wavering on your standards.
It started when I really sucked as a coach, as a head coach. Like, I knew nothing. Those of you that know my history, I was a ballerina. So I didn't know anything about the game, but more importantly, I didn't know about the culture. I didn't know what a healthy culture was supposed to look like. And when they asked me to be the head coach, and I thought they were ridiculously moronic because I knew nothing about this, but I figured, what the heck, I'll give it a shot. And I was horrible, capital letters as a coach. And it wasn't until, Susie, you'll relate to this, because Susie and I both have been beyond blessed to have had a familial relationship with Coach Wooden. And it wasn't until I happened upon his definition of success, which is, we all know, we can all recite this together: success is peace of mind in knowing you've done your best. And I thought, okay, what's my best? Because I'm such an alien to the sport, to the world of athletics. So what does it mean to me? And I was such a geek. I still am an athletic fan geek because I love athletics. And it was so clear to me that sports develop superheroes. And so it wasn't like I didn't care about winning, because, we all are competitive, but it couldn't all be about the win, because that was so shallow. If you're only thinking about winning and wins and losses and the corner office and this and that. So what was it about? It was so clear to me. I'm going to develop champions in life through sport. And I'm going to develop the whole human being, the whole person that is the athlete. And if I do that well enough, I knew that that champion mentality would translate to the competition floor and we would win.
You know, it's so much power in that, because at the time you were doing it your own way, and it didn't really fit the mold for us in athletics, because we had all been brought up under transactional coaching, vertical coaching, more of a, you know, a military type vertical hierarchy. Now there's people out there that are in offices, classrooms, athletic arenas that are trying to navigate this. What gave you the strength to stay within your conviction, knowing you were an outlier in a way?
Yeah, I've been told that a lot, that I was very unorthodox in my way of coaching. And what gave me, what kept me in my lane, honestly, was my faith and my appreciation that I was given this task of overseeing the development of this team, and not just of the athletes, but of the coaches as well. And it was a daunting responsibility. And so I've never been a parent. Susie, you've never been a parent,
No.
but I feel like coaching is as close to as we can come to that massive, daunting responsibility. And the rub is, and not just in sport, but in business, in everything in life, the rub is you're hired to win. You're hired in business, the bottom line. You're hired to whatever winning, however you define that in your professional realm, that's what you're hired to do. You're not hired to mentor. You're not, unless you're a psychologist, you're not hired to do all those things. But I absolutely had the very clear picture of, if I can really develop this whole person, every part of this 18-year-old, 19-year-old, every part of her, and bring that part alive and inspire her, she's going to be a better athlete. I'm going to get a better result in the gym than only focusing on gymnastics. And sadly, in our sport of gymnastics, we've seen what that looks like the last few years with the horrific sexual abuse scandal that happened. How did that happen? Because we only cared about winning.
And winning at all costs, right? Winning at all costs. And even here in the collegiate realm that we were in, systematically coaching, we only measure what we value. We only value what we measure. In our industry, Val and I were paid to win and to graduate. We're really proud to say that we had leaders in the department, led originally by the foundational leader in Dr. Judy Holland, that built UCLA women's athletics, that put us on a trajectory that was unmatched. But Val, don't you see what we're doing around this transformational coaching, and actually we're going to try to flip this traditional profile on its ear and define transformational leadership? And so our challenge is going to be, put that in the contract. Let that be measurable. At UCLA, let's lead the way to say we're rewarding coaches that have great culture, that student athletes that say, I developed as a person. And there's ways to measure that, because as we know, we can measure everything in society. Tell me your thoughts about how we can start this conversation and start changing the standards and operationally kind of put our money where our mouth is.
Well, I'm going to back up, because Susie, you and I have been talking about transformational coaching now for a few years.
Yeah. And
every time we talk about it, you and I talk round and round and round and round and round and round until one of us says, I got to go. And then we hang up.
Right.
And I've really gotten hung up on this. And I got a little anxious thinking about this conversation we're going to have tonight with 800 of our closest friends about, and thank you all again for coming to our party. But this whole, you're going to hear this a lot, this phrase, transformational coaching, transformational leadership. And Susie, I finally figured out why I've been getting so hung up on it, and I can't wait to share it with you.
Hit me! Come on, people, let's do this!
It's game day, Susie! Okay. The reason why I've been getting hung up on this is because is the transformational part, when you say transformational leader, or let's say coach, okay? Transformational coach. Are you talking about the coach changing in nature, changing and growing? Or are you talking about the coach transforming the athlete? And what I finally got after you and I talked about this for 11,000 hours is it's both.
It's both. Yes, it's both.
That is that it, like, am I the only person coming late to this party? Like, did you?
No, you're not. And I think for our listeners, you're probably saying, wait a minute, I've got my own definition of transformational. But for us, for Val and I and the people that are in the athletics department and in the graduate school of education, what we're trying to do is just start these conversations around, can we have self-reflection as a leader? Can we create the conditions to listen better? Can we listen to our staff and our student athletes better, whether we're a professor at UCLA, a chancellor at UCLA, whatever it is? Can we just listen better to our student athletes? And can we all grow together in this environment of training and competition? And then in that, you know this, Val, because we're in charge of creating the conditions for our student athletes to thrive. You know, you were one of the first ones that had talked about, you may not remember, but I remember, listeners, Val brought words into our athletics arena that this idea of thriving was a standard for you. You said, I want my athletes to thrive, my student athletes to thrive, which is really kind of raising the bar. So you can be transformational. You can listen to your student athletes. They can be a part of developing a great thriving culture. And you don't have to worry about your ego. But tell me how from your lens, how can we, our current professors and administrators and teachers and educators, how can we start just not a conversation, but the process to make this a standard?
Well, I think you've said the magic word about 15 times in that last 2 minutes. And that magic word is listen.
Yeah.
And you said, listen to your athletes, listen to your athletes, listen to your athletes. And whether it is, whether you're a coach and athlete, or whether you're a leader and you're leading other people in your profession, you know, we've all heard, or I've heard this many times, you've not taught until they have learned. And so if you're just blah, blah, blahing and you're espousing your philosophies and in our business, the X's and O's of the game, and we're not getting feedback, and we're not really listening to that feedback, we are leading from our egos.
Right.
When you lead from your ego, you get off on your own little world, your own little track where you think everything is great. And that's when you end up with, sadly, Susie, what started you and I talking about this so seriously are the statistics of the reports of depression, anxiety, stress, and suicide. And so as a coach, if I only come out there and lead from my ego, I'm not hearing the depression, the stress, the anxiety. I'm not hearing all of that leads to horrific things. And I feel like we're in this amazing transformative time now where words like vulnerability are no longer weakness. They're not a weakness, they're a sign of strength. We're really understanding that to listen to someone, you've got to shut up and quiet your mind to hear what they're saying. That's a strength, that's a skill, that's not something that just is going to come naturally. And so we're living in a time where these soft skills, and I hate that term, it should be called life skills, where life skills are no longer looked at a secondary component to a relationship, but they're the primary components. And you guys, you know what? You just can go pick up any recently written book on leadership or coaching. And all of the greats of the greats of the greats are going to talk about listening. We just, I don't know, probably most of you watched The Last Dance, and how brilliant Phil Jackson was in those years of listening to his players as individuals not just as basketball players. They're going to help him get another ring. And so we are in a transformative time. And the word, like, I've looked up the word transformative probably 15 times, trying to glean something else from it.
Sure.
But it really is this developing and your nature and your character and changing the format of it and all that. But that change only comes through education, ever. And so, and there's not just one avenue that I feel we as coaches, as leaders, need to learn from. There's books, there's podcasts, there's YouTube, and there is conversation.
And you know, one of the conflicts that we have with sport and society is because the coach is paid to win. The coach has currency. Val knows what this is. Every week in season, you have 20 hours with your student athletes. That's our currency, because that's what we're controlling to get to our end goal, to win and have student athletes graduate. Val, don't you feel when you talk about transformational leadership, we've got to, from the top, I challenge our leaders on our campus, I challenge our leaders in athletics across the country. How can we make it a standard where we reward coaches that say, you know what, America, out of my 20 hours a week, we spend X percentage every day on competitive character. I like to call it competitive character because when you say character, people say, as you said, soft skills. And what I found is when I look at your program and your success, who the people were, their character drove their fanatical process and high standard. And then you let go of the results because you can't control those. Don't you feel, Val, we have to start this conversation around, you've got to be willing to have the courage to make character development and personal development happen during practice, because then you're sending a message to the student athletes how important this is.
Right. But I also feel that absolutely, and I'm going to speak to that in a second. I feel though that old school coaches,
Yep,
they need to be shown, they need the facts. They need, you know, we can't just tell them you need to care about your athletes as human beings. They need to understand why this is going to actually help them win more. It's
right.
That's why I love competitive character, because we are developing that competitiveness through the whole human being, not just the athlete. But I have documented, I'm looking at to my right, I probably have 20 journals over the last 29 years I was the head coach, 37 is at UCLA. And
When are you going to print those?
I know, huh? Golden, right?
Right.
But when we would have an issue in the gym, what Susie's talking about is, I don't remember how many years ago the NCAA told us we could only have 20 hours a week with our student athletes. For a gymnast, the gymnasts that we got at UCLA, they trained an average of 7 hours a day, 6 days a week. Okay, do the math. It's a lot more than 20 hours a week. So I was like, oh my gosh, what am I gonna do? So I spent so much on that time on their mind, making them mentally tough and all that. But the days in the gym that were horrible, that we had meltdowns, that obviously there was strife amongst the student athletes. Instead of just thinking old school, I have to get the numbers in, I can't stop right now because they have to do 4 more beam routines. I said, okay, time out, everybody up to the team room, let's go. And I would stop workout. I would take that currency that Coach Enquist is talking about, and I would take as long as it needed, whether it was 15 minutes or an hour. And I would say, all right, let's talk it out. What's going on? And then I would just keep asking questions until one of them spoke up. And Chris, our coaching staff always used to say, once we got them crying, we knew that it was going to be a great day. Because it literally was like, it's the pressure. And my student athletes hate it when I use this example, but I love this example. It's like a really, really, really bad infested pimple. And that's what our emotional junk is. That's not out. It's on that. It's right. It's a pressure cooker. It's here. Well, how do you get rid of that pressure cooker? You've got to apply pressure from the outside. Then you got to get all that junk out of there. What does that look like? conversation, communication, listening.
You
And
know, that is so exactly. That's a great segue to what I want to ask you. We've gotten some questions, so I have fed in the questions that we have gotten from our listeners in this conversation. So I want to thank our listeners for the questions that they put forth, because I enjoyed tucking them in there. Val, I want you to opine on, walk us through if Val Kondos was coaching today, knowing that society right now and sport are, the lines are blurring. And I love this because now it's a chance for transformational coaching to thrive, because now we have an environment to bring together all of our student athletes and to have these conversations around social justice and around equity. Tell me, walk us through, and I want to be sensitive to the clock. We're honing in. We got about 9 minutes left, but can you give us all an example of how you today would be tackling that head on? I know you would. And we're UCLA. That's what we do. We're those people that literally society comes right inside of our sport environment. Talk to us about that a little bit.
well, I think the first of all is to show tremendous respect to these student athletes by letting them know, I want to hear what you have to say. I'm a 60-year-old woman. I've lived through different eras than you've lived through. I want to know what you're thinking right now. And I wish I would have had this conversation when I was coaching, because at UCLA, we have so much diversity and we've always had diverse teams. And I'm just now learning so much about what the different ethnicities have gone through that I didn't realize before. But I would say to them, I'd say, okay, guys, guess what? We're going to take an hour on Thursday. We're going to have a team meeting and we're going to talk about, what does systemic injustice mean? And so I'm going to give you guys, the respect is, now I'm going to show my student athletes a ton of respect. I'm going to take time out of my currency to talk about this thing. And that's how important it is. B, I'm letting you know up front so that you're not getting hit, and so that you can prepare and come prepared to talk about something that is important to you. And if you don't have anything right now, go talk to your friends, your Black friends, your Hispanic friends. Go talk to them. Come prepared for something. And I feel like every time I did that about any issue, where I let the student athletes know what was going on, it showed a tremendous amount of respect for them, to them.
Mm-hmm.
And so they responded. So our meetings were so much richer because they felt respected.
Mm-hmm. When you talk about that, and both of us are so proud to be Bruins, not because just that we're part of a winning program, but we really do believe in the mission of UCLA, a public institution, and to be servants to the community. And I'm really indebted to Dr. Anna Marie Francois in the Graduate School of Education. We had a number of conversations around social justice about, 4 months ago. And we had this conversation about, why isn't the student athlete at UCLA our ambassador to access? We don't care what color you are, where you live, how much money's in your pocket. Access, excellence. UCLA is going to create the conditions for you to be yourself, but to send a message around humanity, that no matter what people's political beliefs are, we can look at each other in the eye and go, tell me your story through your lens. I'm going to tell you my story through my lens. Let's respect each other's lens and be able to go and provide access to excellence for all our brothers and sisters everywhere. Today, it's about our Black brothers and sisters. UCLA athletics can be that ambassador. And that's where I get excited, right? Like we've talked about this, Val, to be able to say to our student athletes, we want you to come here and develop as a whole person. We want you to test yourself in the athletic arena. But most importantly, we need you to send a message of humanity and excellence, and this idea of equity, and making sure that everyone has an opportunity to have this great education. And then what that does is just makes the quality of their life that much better. I know when you look at this, how do you see it? Like, how can we as UCLA Athletics and our education department partner together to really change not only LA, but let's change the whole world, right?
Exactly. No, let's change the world.
Yeah.
Yes.
I'm,
Bruins, we're going to change the world. Okay.
I know, I
Um,
believe that.
and Susie, you and I have been doing this now for especially since COVID. I mean, the number of Zooms I know that we both have been on talking about this very thing, talking about conversation, and it started before the Black Lives, it started with the political environment that we are heading into and all of that these next 4 months. And I gotta tell you, I have spent so many hours talking to alumni, UCLA Gymnastics alumni from the 80s to ones that just graduated this last year. They are so eloquent with their personal stories and truths. And not one of them, I've probably spoken to 15 of them over the last few weeks. Not one of them has felt like a pity party or whining, or they have. And you know what it's as simple as, Susie? It's as simple as, instead of walking by and saying, "Hey, how you doing?" Walking up to someone, looking them in the eye and saying, "How are you today? How are you feeling today?" And making that eye contact, as soon as you make that eye contact, you're connecting with that person. And it slows the conversation down to where it can actually be a conversation and not something fleeting. And I feel like UCLA is the perfect university to put out multiple different platforms like this, like one of these with student athletes, a format where we're going to bring 6 of our student athletes together. We're just going to ask them question after question, ask them to tell stories. It can come from, as we said, the academic side, the athletic side. It comes from all over. I'm working with the UCLA alumni about things like this. I know that you are working with different factions of UCLA, and it's layering these conversations about, literally about having open communication and conversation, and showing the world that you can even disagree with each other in a respectful and educational way.
And as we're getting close on the time to close up, but we have so many of our listeners that are still here. I'm going to continue the conversation, and I want to go a little bit deeper. Let's talk about one of the original transformative coaches that was extremely close to you. Let's talk about Papa Wooden and how he today. I said this the other day. I wish Papa was here. I wish that Pat Summitt was here. Some of our thought leaders that were so ahead of their time. Tell me, let's pretend Coach Wooden is here right now. Val, you were so close to him. You were probably the closest coach in the department to Papa Wooden.
No,
you and
I were, and the third person who wasn't a coach is Annie Myers-Drysdale.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Annie Myers, for sure. I wouldn't have had the opportunity if it wasn't for Annie Myers.
But you know what came to my mind as soon as you mentioned him was, and I've heard this story from Mike Warren. You all know Mike Warren, right?
Yep.
One of the
Great Bruin
ever. And must have been the 60s, yeah. And he was dating a white girl. And Coach Wooden called him into his office and talked to him about his concern, not because of the color of her skin, but because of the cultures that they both grew up in that were obviously different. And that and as Coach Wooden explained it to him, when you merge in a union with someone, you want to have commonalities and common ground. And he felt that there would be too much disparity between Mike Warren being brought up in an African-American home and his white girlfriend. And Coach was he grew up in the Midwest, farming in Martinsville, Indiana. But the way Mike Warren tells it, Coach wasn't talking to him. they were having a conversation. This was in the 60s. The same thing, like as you're talking right now, is what happening with the protests and all that, was the conversation that Coach Wooden had with Bill Walton when he, right? Like street in front of the federal building in protest. And Coach Wooden called him into his office, and Coach wasn't talking about his politics. All he said was, Bill, did you stop and think of what might happen if an ambulance needed to come by with someone that had to get to the hospital and you were blocking the road? And so he was, like you said, Coach Wooden was one of the first transformative coaches that we know of. Those are the two conversations that came up as soon as you said that. And you and I have heard those stories from their mouths, Mike's and Bill's mouth.
Yep, there's no doubt about it. And when you think about Coach had that ability to care about his student athletes, but oh, please believe when you talk to them and you have those side conversations, or you hear Papa talking about it when he was alive, nothing goes before the team other than those standards that hold up the team concept. So as much as he would always take care of that student, there were standards. And when you were first referencing Bill Walton, I thought you were going to reference, he was, Bill was a fixture during that time of great change. And yet Coach Wooden had standards. And he tells the story about, how Bill didn't want to cut his hair. And Papa says, well, Bill, we're going to miss you, So I love that coaches have the courage to uphold their standards, but also can remain relevant, especially at a time like now when we need our programs to stay relevant. Val, when I talk about relevance, I think about what's happening with our athletics right now, right? This week is very unique. We're in a leadership change in the athletics department. And I just want to shout out to our former boss, Dan Guerrero, who was an incredible leader. He was a class act and thoughtful and did so many great things. And now we're transitioning with our new leader, Martin Jarman. And I can't think of a better person to come in and lead us hopefully to the next 20, 30 years. Tell me your thoughts about this time of change in our athletics department as well.
Well, what I love about Martin, I mean, I don't even know him. You met him because Susie was on the search committee, but I mean, this is his first week. Is this his, July. This is his first week.
Yeah.
And on day 2 of his first week, he is meeting with alum from different sports to listen to them, their experiences, what they have felt since they've graduated and on. It's like, think about everything that is on his plate right now. Think about how stacked Martin Jarman's plate is, our new athletic director. Think of everything he has to do. And it's important for him on day 2 of his job at UCLA to listen.
And just, when you think about, for many of us out there that are UCLA Bruins, and I know we have many Bruin listeners, this time of just there's so much uncertainty, right? And when I think about a new leader, this is also a great opportunity because, when things are going good or okay, people are resistant to change. And now there's so many avenues that we're going to be able to go down and be a leader when we're recalibrating. Of course that we are in so much uncertainty with our pandemic and all the social injustice and now for us at UCLA with the Under Armour deal, right? So we've got some financial challenges as well. But I think, and when you think about your coaching career, I think this is when true champions do their best work. Val, tell us a time when you think about your career where you were faced with that challenge, whatever it may be, and had to bounce back and rely on your character to get you through.
Well, when you've coached as long as we have, that we could literally have 8 hours worth of stories of the things that come to mind, right? But one that I think will resonate the most with our listeners because it's current is Caitlin Ohashi and viral sensation. But when she came in as a freshman, she was a rebel and a half because she was coached from the age of 12. She was the best gymnast in the world. And she was under this Russian regime from her coach. And she was stripped of her voice. She was emotionally and verbally abused. It was horrible. So she comes to UCLA, takes it all out on me and the team. And she looks me, I mean, imagine this, Susie, one of your freshmen who's now like, if you were expecting 100%, let's say I was expecting 90% of her talent, right?
Yes.
Now I'm 60% because she's just such a derelict. And she, as a little 18-year-old, looks me in the eye and says, Miss Val, I just want you to know that everything you tell me to do, I do the exact opposite. So what do you do, right? I mean, you're the leader. I'm the leader of UCLA Gymnastics. What do I do? So I could say, okay, listen, that's fine. You can have your opinion, but you're going to do this, 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 and this. And because you're being such a little brat right now, I'm going to reprimand you, and you're going to get up 2 hours early, and you're going to go on the track, and I could have asserted my macho, egotistical leadership, which is the exact opposite of what needed to happen. Mm-hmm. Here she was challenging me to treat her with love.
Yeah, exactly.
And so thankfully, I was quiet. I quieted my mind. And inside, I remember saying to myself, okay, Caitlin Ahashi, challenge accepted. And I took a deep breath and I was like, okay, how do relationships form? Through trust. How does trust form? Through a lot of layers. It's going to take a long time, but I'm in it. And I set out to develop her trust in me. And obviously I did. And she went on to have the biggest athletic gymnastics career, even though she wasn't an Olympian. I mean, we got Olympians on our team, even though she wasn't that. And so it was like that rub that makes you, as a leader, as a coach, as a parent, want to go assert your leadership and say, I'm going to show you who's leading, and squash them. Okay, that doesn't do any good toward the goal of getting like this with each other. Squashing somebody doesn't do it. And that's what my whole TED Talk is about, is we have all prescribed to this win at all cost culture in business, in athletics, in everything, in every avenue of life. We have all, is the word subscribed or prescribed, whatever it is, to this win at all cost culture. At what cost? That's what so many leaders will not ask and will not address. At what cost?
It's so true, right? I want to ask you to speak to our parents out there, parents of performing children. You may be a parent of a dancer, a spelling bee, a musician, an athlete. Val, speak to the importance of the parents standing firm that we're not in a race to get a scholarship. We're not trying to beat out another person, but to stay on your path. Because when I told people that we were going to be doing this, I got a lot of people saying, please have Miss Val talk about what does a great parent of a performing child look like.
Great. Okay. First of all, is you need to have a conversation with your daughter or son, and you need to define success with them. And that definition cannot be what someone else's child is doing or what someone before them did. And it should not be like, you can have the end goal be, you know what, Mom, I'd really love to play at a D1 school. I'd really love to get a scholarship. Okay, great. Put that out there. But now let's back that up and let's define what success is going to look like these next 6 months, this next month, this next week, and then tomorrow. So I'm going to help you define what success is going to look like. Then, and the fun part about that is your children are competitive. So they're going to want to achieve these goals, right? Of these little micro goals. But the biggest thing is that when they don't achieve it, or they're going off the wrong path, unless they're going to have significant results, negative results, you got to let them fail. You have to let them fail. And then don't judge them. Don't reprimand. Have a conversation with them and just say, listen, you chose to stay up till 3 a.m. and you knew you had 8 o'clock workout in the next morning. What did you expect was going to happen? And so if you want to have a better result tomorrow, maybe you should make a better decision today. And bring into the conversation, because once somebody is in the conversation, then they're taking ownership of it, and then let them fail.
Val, I want to just pull deeper on this because it's so important. And full transparency to all our listeners, listen to the 2 middle-aged women know-it-all coaches that have no children, and we're opining on how to be a parent. But having said that, Val, you've been in the office many times when you have that first conversation. Now, today in the pandemic, it's probably going to be on the phone with the student athlete. Tell me some of the yellow flags with the overbearing parents when it comes in that recruit process. Give our parents some tips and tools on how to unparent in these moments when it's just the coach and the student athlete. Talk about that a little bit. Pull back the curtain, Val. Let's give these parents like what the coaches are really thinking.
Okay, well, I would say 90% of the time that I ask a student athlete a question, the parent answers.
Yellow flag, people, yellow flag.
Yellow to red flag. Then politely, I will say, oh, okay, thank you so much. Susie, what do you think about that? What do you think of this? And you can tell when the child is not used to having their own opinion or speaking up because they're just deer in the headlight. They don't know what to say. So parents, let your children speak. They're not going to be perfect. They're not going to say the perfect thing. It's okay. Coaches are smart enough to be able to see through all of this with children. The other thing that I think with parents is, and what you and I have noticed, and every single coach of every sport will tell you, the young people that they've coached the last 10, 15 years are different than the ones before. Because, and I'm not saying all kids, the majority of them have been handheld. Their parents have done every single thing for them. They have not enjoyed the sense of inner pride and joy that comes from a job well done, of working, of like, I never got allowance just because my parents gave me money. I worked for it. Or my dad said, you know what? My dad was an artist. He's like, go do it. Go give me a 4-page book report on Monet and I'll give you $10 for your allowance, And so many of the athletes, especially, and I'm probably pulling back the curtain too much, and I apologize if I'm offending anybody right now.
Here it comes, people.
The affluent, the girls that have grown up with a lot of affluence. I had to tell a mom, I've had to tell 2 different moms the last few years, you cannot come up every week and do your child's laundry. And they're like, hi, why not? She's got so much on her plate. She doesn't get through her homework in time. It's like, they don't understand that by shackling their children, they're actually harming them. And here we get back to Coach Wooden again, who one of his favorite quotes was from Abraham Lincoln. The worst thing a parent can do for a child is the thing that they can and should do on their own.
Brilliant.
And it's not about tough love. It's about, we all know this as adults. We know that feel good that we have from a job well done. We know what that feels like, right?
Yep.
To say, oh my God, okay, I'm going to make my bed again. Who cares if I make my bed? Nobody sees the bed, I'm going to take the time to make the bed. Okay, I get tremendous pride in making my bed in the morning. Yeah. We prevent our children from that feeling of pride in the job well done. And I just wish, there's so many old school things that I wish that we would get back to.
Well, I think we can do both, right? We can be at UCLA, we can be relevant. We can merge the lines, we can blur the lines between sport and society. Student athletes can be ambassadors, coaches can be influencers, and we can have the really good stuff in the old school of fundamentals and standards. But also, as you said, be transformational, be a great listener, and learn from what you hear. And then we lift up everybody. So our call to action tonight, Val, as we start to close this up, I so appreciate everybody just staying here the entire time. We wanted to be sensitive to everybody's time. Is our call to action is this: if you're a leader in education or in athletics, maybe just start to create the conditions to listen a little bit more to your staff and to your subordinates or to your student athletes. And what you do learn from that environment or from those conversations, try to build processes in to make it more enjoyable for everybody. So the student and the teacher, or the player and the coach, we're all learning together. And when we do that, we become great role models for society to try that as well. I just want to, on behalf of Val, I want to thank our community. But Val, I want to give you a chance to just have some closing thoughts to our community, because our goal is to bring them back, because we have critical conversations. We're going to have multiple conversations, honest conversations, tough conversations. Val, some closing thoughts to our community.
I just would say, echoing what you just said about the time that we're in right now. And I think that regardless of who you're sharing dialogue with, that if we can all model humility and vulnerability for other people and show them that it's not a weakness, it's actually a strength. Because right now, if you are a living, breathing human being and you're not having some stress or anxiety or uncertainty, you're not living and breathing, because
Right.
the whole world is experiencing this unrest. We all are feeling that. And I feel it's important for me every time I speak, especially with younger kids, and someone says, "How you doing, Miss Val?" I don't say, "I'm great," because that's a lie. And so I model what authentic humility and vulnerability looks like by saying, you know what? Multiple times a day, I get really down.
Mm.
This is how I pull myself up out of it.
Mm-hmm.
So there's the vulnerable, there's the humble, the humility, then there's the teaching moment. And we are all there every day, regardless of who we're talking to, the person at the grocery store, whomever it is. I feel like if we can all model that behavior for each other, we will get through this like this.
There's no doubt about it. And really just drawing from I call it the wisdom of uncertainty. Val, you had it throughout your own career as a coach. You had to tackle the unknown every week. The leaders out there, you're tackling unknown every day prior to COVID, prior to all of this social unrest that we're having. And so we're going to ask you to draw on that each and every day, and know that there's a community here that's going to start these conversations and keep them going. And hopefully we make it better, because for us, we're Bruins, we're stubborn optimists. And to everybody, I just want to thank you for taking the time tonight, and we look forward to seeing you again. Good night.
Good night.